Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today we are looking at why Wally was banned. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we looked the other day about, 4 new cards have been banned. And I told you that what we really needed was to have a video looking at them all in detail, figuring out exactly why they were banned, and whether in fact it was a good ban. Well, it's time to have a look at Wally. And look, at the heart of it, Wally is really because of Trevenant. But backing up, we know that the expanded format next year is going to be black and white. There is no rotation, just these couple of cards being banned. What does Wally do? Well, it essentially allows you to evolve a Pokemon one stage without waiting the usual amount of time. So you can use a Wally as soon as you lay it down onto the field, and even if it's your first turn of the game, even if the Pokemon hasn't been down a turn, you can evolve up. Now, this leads to some cool combos, and there's many a video where I've said something along the lines of, and this, of course, becomes much better when you use it with Wally, because that allows you to just evolve it straight up. But really, it's all about Trevenant. You see, Trevenant is a very good Pokemon that when it's in the active position, stops your opponent being able to use item cards. Item cards being extremely good, powerful cards that help you get rolling. So with a Trevenant in the active, your opponent cannot use an Ultra Ball to go and grab themselves a Tapu Lele to go and grab a supporter. They also aren't able to use something like a computer search. They're not able to use a Versus Seeker after having used a Battle Compressor to discard a supporter card. Put simply, if a Trevenant is in the active, either you've got a Tapu Lele in hand, you've got a supporter in hand, or you're not able to actually go and get yourself a supporter. And it gets worse because, generally speaking, you're able to use cards like Shaman EX or Octillery to go and draw extra cards. But if you're not able to play item cards, then you end up holding a whole bunch of cards in your hand that you usually wouldn't be holding. Meaning, you have a larger hand size. And Shaman allows you to draw until you've got 6 cards in your hand. Octillery allows you to draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. So if you've got a hand of 7 cards, neither Shaman nor Octillery will help you out. You've got to have a supporter, or you've got to have a Tapu Lele. And sometimes that supporter will be a Professor Sycamore, which is great, except all of a sudden you're having to discard stage 1s like Octillery because you haven't been able to find basics like Remoraid. You're having to discard stuff like Choice Band because you haven't been able to attach it yet. You're having to discard that Max Elixir because you've never had a turn to actually play it, and your choices are either you discard it with Professor Sycamore, or you continue to not draw anything. Trevenant in the active is a very, very bad thing indeed, because it just essentially stops you playing the game. Now, that is only Trevenant when it's in the active. Now, you can't use Escape Rope because, it's an item card, but we've got Lysander and Guzma, both of which are very good, widely played cards that people use to drag a bench Pokemon active. So unless your opponent only has Trevenant on the field, which will be the case sometimes but not always, you can use a Lysander or a Guzma to drag another Pokemon active, and then all of a sudden their item lock goes away. And you can use all of your items, and you can use stuff like Versus Seeker to make sure that you've got a supporter card ready for next turn, so that you can be rolling even with a Trevenant in the active. You can plan for Trevenant, and that means that you can avoid Trevenant. It's not always perfect, but it's alright. And bearing in mind, Trevenant's weak to Zoroark, because it's probably the best deck in Expanded. It's got to be some good if it can be good with Zoroark in the format, and the answer is, it is that good. But Trevenant becomes a problem with Wally, because if you go first as a Trevenant player, you can play a Wally, and then you've got a Trevenant in the active before your opponent has even drawn a card. That is not good. It means your opponent essentially has no item cards for the entire game. And most of you, if you've been playing a while, will have come across a Trevenant that did this. And you will understand why this is absolutely over the top terribly bad and why something had to be done about it. There's nothing fun about this. There's nothing fun, even if you're the Trevenant player. There's no fun in watching your opponent draw nothing, 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 lose. They're not fun games, ladies and gentlemen. They are not particularly fun games. And if we look at these bans that Pokemon has been enacting, they are banning cards that stop games being fun, that stop you playing the game. So Archeops gets banned. Of course it does, because it stops you evolving your Pokemon from your hand. Lysander's Trump card gets banned because you can reuse item cards like Hypnotoxic Laser and Crushing Hammer every single turn. Puzzle of Time gets banned pretty much for the same reason. Getsis gets banned because it can be used on turn 1 to get rid of all of your items, and Hexmaniac gets banned because you can chain this with Versus Seeker to just make sure your opponent never has abilities. Pokemon are being very consistent. They are banning cards that stop you playing the game. And at this point, Wally says hello. And it's a little bit sad because there are so many cool littler cards that can be used so nicely with Wally here. But at the end of the day, Trevenant and Wally is just broken. And it sucks. But that's where we are. And it's not like it's difficult to get Trevenant out. You've got Phantump. So if you go first, your opponent has a turn and then you can manually evolve into Trevenant. If you go second, your opponent has a turn and you can use Ascension to have a Trevenant there at the end of your turn. So your opponent only has one turn of item cards. Not to mention you can use Dimension Valley so that Ascension becomes a free attack. So it's not like Trevenant becomes unplayable or bad. It just means that your opponent doesn't get quite so, you can't play the game. Now, the other thing is you've got Trevenant Break, and this actually works with Wally quite nicely as well. Because let's say you go first, you've got a Phantump, you're not able to get the Trevenant with a Wally. You can manually evolve into Trevenant and Wally turn 2 to get Trevenant Breakout, and then you can be using Silent Fear with Dimension Valley for 1 Psychic Energy, putting free damage counters on all of your opponent's Pokemon. And yes, the combination of you can't use items and all of your Pokemon are taking free damage counters, that is a very powerful combination that will just take people out of the game entirely. It is just annoying. Now, it's not just Trevenant that can use Wally. Another combo which we don't see used very often but springs to mind is using this with Zoroark. So essentially what you do here is you go second. If you can fill your bench Wally into Zoroark and get a double colourless energy, then you can be using Riotous Beating with a Skyfield potentially for 180 damage on the first turn of the game. Now, or on your first turn of the game. It's not the easiest thing to use ever, because, let's face it, you've got to try and fill up your bench and get a double colourless energy without using a draw supporter because you're using Wally. But the point here is, it could happen. And like a lot of these bans, it's not necessarily just what it can do now, it's what it can do in the future. We don't know what stage 1s are going to be released in the future that could make this utterly broken. As an argument, let's say the new Macargo GX. The new Macargo GX has an ability whereby you discard the top card of your deck, and if it's a basic energy, you attach it to one of your Pokemon in play. Maybe this opens up a situation where people can use multiple energy attacks much more easily than they would be able to without this. I mean, to be honest, the fact that you've still got Max Elixir in the format is probably more of an issue than Macargo ever will be, but the point is, it's a possibility. We don't know what's going to be released in the future, and now it doesn't really matter what's released in the future, because whatever it is, it ain't going to be an issue. Wally's gone, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little bit sad, but there's not much we can do about it. Is it a good ban? Yes, but only because of Trevenant. And Pokemon basically said this when they announced a ban, it was because of Trevenant. I think when you take Trevenant out, there's no Pokemon that can really fully take advantage of this card. Unfortunately, you're not taking Trevenant out, and as it is, it's an issue. But I want to know if you think it's an issue. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but remember the number one rule. It is very important. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wally, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.